Okay, good evening. So our topic this evening is about musculoskeletal system and connective tissue. So we'll be talking about muscles and skeletal system, as well as the ligaments, tendons, and blood, fats. So all of this will be discussed this evening. Okay, so and I'm going to post it tomorrow since we don't have internet today in our house because of what happened. Okay, so let's start our discussion uh, with the terminology that is used in musculoskeletal system and connective tissue. So here we are going to use the Greek and Latin terms for shape, sizes. Some word parts may help you remember the locations as well as characteristic of the anatomical structures. Okay, and also we'll discuss the meaning. So we have here now, I'm going to show you, uh, this is the skeletal system. Okay, so we have two types of skeleton, the axial and the appendicular. So it is shown here, this here in the middle, this is your axial skeleton, which includes the skull, uh, the cervical region, the sternum, the ribs, the vertebral column, and the sacrum. These are axial skeleton. And you have your appendicular skeleton, which includes your shoulder girdle, which includes clavicle, scapula. Okay, then you have your upper limbs, which your humerus, radius, and then ulna, and then the carpal bones, then your phalanges. Okay, so then here we have the pelvic girdle, then the femur, patella, tibia, fibula, and then your tarsal and your digits or your toes. Okay, so let's start with the functions of the muscular system and connective tissue. So basically, um, the musculoskeletal system is composed of three interrelated parts: the bones, joints, and muscles. So bones are joined together but through the joints, and muscles are the one moving the bones depending on the type of joints where the bones are united. So the one that connecting the bones and the joints as well as the muscle is your connective tissue. So they are related. So um, your muscles is covered by a tough connective tissue which we call fascia. Now fascia is a very tough, very thin but tough sheet of covering, okay, which acts as a framework for the organ system and protect many body organs, provide the organism with the ability to move, provide formation of blood cells, and act as storage of minerals and salts. So this is the function of the fascia. Now here, if you notice in the side, we can see here important words that we need to consider. Here we have here musculoskeletal. So we have musculo, which means muscle, skeletal, which that refers to the bone. Then pertaining, no? So we'll be talking about pertaining to muscles and skeleton. Then you have here the word bone. So we have ang bone is translated into osteo. So or osseous. So any word with osseous, they are related to bone. Then you have your joint. So a joint, ang term na ginagamit, anatomical terms, joint is your articulation. So this, when you heard the word arthro or articulation, that refers to the joint. Then your muscular, which is your muscles, which is your musculo and myo. Ligaments, you have your ligamento or syndesmo. So when you heard the word syndesmo, that refers to the ligaments, okay, or ligamento. Tendons, you have tendino and tendon or teno. Okay. Okay, so let's go now to the skeletal system. So on cartilage, you will be using the word chondro. That's the root word. So let's go now to the skeletal system. So skeletal system is composed of two connective tissue, your cartilage and bone. It is made up of collagen substance, and the collagen substance is hardened by matrix, which is made up of minerals, which acts as a cement of this collagen. Okay, so let's go now to the cartilage. Cartilage class is composed of collagen fibers and cartilage cells, which is known as chondrocytes. So the cells of the cartilage is known as chondrocytes. So if you see the word or the prefix site, suffix sites, that means cells. So chondro, cartilage. So the cells of the cartilage is chondrocytes. Okay. Now there are three varieties of cartilage. You have your elastic, fibro cartilage, and hyaline. Now elastic cartilage are very stretchy. They have very abundant elastin fibers. So basically this is made up of elastic cartilage, as well as the nose, okay, as well as the temporary bones of the skull of children or the fetus. That is made up of elastic cartilage, and later on it will ossify. Then you have your fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage, named for bundles of collagen fibers. It is found in the disc between backbones. So between the vertebra, we have there what we call intervertebral disc that is made up of fibrocartilage. And also the symphysis pubis, or the joints between the pubis. Okay, nag-unite na niya is your fibrocartilage. No? Then you have your hyaline. Hyaline cartilage is a glassy cartilage for its appearance. So medyo sinaw-sinaw siya. So basically it is found at the ends of the long bones. So hyaline cartilage is also known as articular cartilage. Now the covering of the elastic cartilage as well as the fibrocartilage is known as perichondrium. Okay, the main functions of perichondrium is to supply nutrients to this cartilage by means of simple diffusion. So your cartilage class is lacks nerve supply, so therefore you cannot easily detect or sense the deterioration of this structure because it lacks nerve supply. So before you know it, your cartilage is already damaged. So you will just know it that there is a damage of the cartilage if there will be now direct contact between bone and cartilage, or bone-to-bone contact at the end of the long bones. So basically sa arthritis or osteo or rheumatoid type of arthritis, no? Dili na nimo siya ma-appreciate nga sakit ang joint nimo kung dili na mag-abot ang duha ka bukog, no? Kay siyempre ang end sa cartilage da puti man na, no? Ma-erode na siya, then mag-abot na ang bone to bone, mawala man tong cartilage. So that's the time that you will sense that your articular cartilage or your hyaline cartilage is already damaged. So we have here costochondral. So when you say costo means cost, chondral means cartilage. So costochondral means costal cartilages. So we can find costal cartilages and the false ribs, no? Dito sa false ribs na to, especially ribs 8, 9, and 10. So all of these ribs class is merged, no? Diri na siya dapat makita. Ang end na nila wala gid siya ga direct contact sa sternum, but rather it nag-merge ang cartilage na isa ra ka cartilage, then nag-merge na niya ang tulo ka ribs, no? So isa ka connection dito sa cartilage. Then you have your perichondrium surrounding around the cartilage structure. So here, bone, we have two types of bones. We have the cortical bone and the cancellous. Cortical bone is also known as compact bone, while your cancellous is known as your spongy. So here in the illustration, so this is your compact bone and this is your spongy. So basically the spongy bone is made out of trabeculae. So this is how your trabeculae look like. It is very abundant at the end of the long bone because trabeculae is not only responsible for transmitting the load or distributing the load applied to the bone on the different parts of the bone, so that it will not be only, or the load will not be focused only in one area that will result to injury, but rather it distributes it. And trabeculae is very abundant also at the end of the long bone, or both in the proximal and distal part, because one function of trabeculae, it contains red bone marrow that is responsible for red blood cell production. Okay, so let's go now to the bone formation. So how do bone form? So bone form by means of osteogenesis. Osteo means bones. Genesis means beginning, diba? Or production. Diba? When you say Genesis in the book of Genesis, means it is the beginning. So the beginning of the bone, or the origin of the bone, or the production of the bone. So inana siya. So the osteogenesis of the bone is also called as ossification. Ana siya process, or formation of new bone. So the primary cells which is responsible for bone formation is your osteoblast. Then when these osteoblasts mature, it will become osteocytes. And of course, you have another cells which is responsible for resorption or reabsorbing the bone tissue. You have your osteoclast. Okay, it breaks down the bone and release the calcium in your bloodstream. So especially osteoclast is very active if you are if your body needs more calcium and there's no external source, wala ka gainom gatas, so asa man kaon sa body ang calcium, i-break down niya imong bukog. So that's why in elderly individual, common kaayo ang mga osteoporosis, kay nga naman wala naman kayo na sila gainom og milk, so asa man ni kaon ang calcium nga needed sa body, especially kung hingaon ka og food that acidic, no? Example sa acidic na food kanang lang ginagamit sa kanilaw, no? Suka, soft drinks. So these are acidic substances and it needs to be buffered para, or it needs to be mixed with another substance so that it will become a slightly basic. So kung acidic na unsa may i-mix nimo sa acid, usually metallic ba kay, so let's take for example chlorine. Unsa may i-mix nimo para di siya magmix sa hydrogen para mahimong acid, butangan nimo og sodium, no? Butangan nimo og calcium chloride ba, salt man na siya, base. So mo gyapon na itong body. So para dito ma-form ang acid, mag-breakdown siya calcium para mahimo niyang slightly basic. Okay, so we have here bone matrix is formed by fibrous protein. So ang bukog nagahin siya mo ni siya yung kuning gay na siya ay bone matrix para mag-make sa collagen. So you have here, these are the compound or the chemical compound that forms the matrix. Your hydroxyapatite, okay, so it is a cement, no? So it is mixed with collagen. So once it mixed with collagen, the collagen hardens, no? Inana siya kay man siya hardener niya bali ang hydroxyapatite. Okay, so the collagen provides extensibility, while the hydroxyapatite provides hardness of the bone. Extensibility means ability of the muscle to be deformed without breaking. So inana siya. Hardness, of course, kabalo naman ta hard. Okay, so there are several parts of the bone. So we have here kana siya, kung imong tanawon na siya, na siya concentric ring, no? And kaning lamellae, we call this as lamellae, no, of the bone. Kana siya concentric ring, we call that concentric ring. Kanang individual nga ring, we call that as osteons. Okay, so in a bone, daghang osteon nga naa sa cancellous bone. Okay, so ang isa ka osteon or ang osteon, isa ka buok nga osteons, ginatawag na siya nga Harveysian. Isa na siya ka kuano na siya ginatawag nga Harveysian system. So ang Harveysian system na siya ay kanal sa tunga, then made up of several layers of ring which we called ginatawag natin siya dito nga Harveysian canal.
Papa! Kaka's water! Papa!
Sige na, galicture pa si pa.
Can you?
Yes, sige na, okay.
Kaka's water?
Then your
Papa? Papa?
we will discuss now the skeleton. I have mentioned it.
Kaka's water.
Okay, so we discussed now a while ago muna siya ang skeleton, no? Ito na siya, no? So going back, these are the basic parts of the bone, no? Ako naman siya na-mention sa anatomy nito nga lecture, so nandito kwanda. So you have here the eggshell, the appendicular, no? So mananina, I have already discussed this a while ago. So we have here bone shapes, no? So bone shapes is there are five, no, actually five ragid ang nasa ubang book, no? So of course sesamoid is additional. So you have there manang name mo sing six. So you have long bones, no? Classified na siya ang bones according to shape. So you have long bones. So ang naa sa long bones is your humerus, your radius, your ulna, your phalanges, femur, tibia, fibula. These are long bones. You have your short bones, which is your carpal bones and your tarsal bones. So carpal bones, the wrist bone, and the bones in your ankle, no? Then your flat bone, that includes your sternum, your scapula, and your pelvis, no? Pelvis and your bones of the skull. These are flat. And basically flat bones are responsible for production of red blood cells or RBC, no? Naadra ang red bone marrow. That's why in bone transplant, asa man ginakuha ang bone marrow, no, sa mga patient kanay leukemia diri sa pelvis, no. Okay, ana man siya. Okay, then you have your sesamoid patella. So patella is only one of the sesamoid bone. We have a lot of sesamoid bone in the body. Here in the thumb, we have here sesamoid bone sa hallux, na apuntay sesamoid bone dito sa big toe or hallux. This is pollex, no? Sa pollex ang term na niya. Okay, so inana. So bone structure, let's go now to the bone structure. So sa term, so when you say dia means true, epiphysis which means growth or nature. So diaphysis means that is the area of the bone where growth happens. Epiphysis means above, no? So sa long bones class or basic parts sa long bones, actually long bones man yung describe diri, no? So kay mao magani siya na eye parts gyud halos, no? Makita ang mga short wala man kay siya ba sa head wala ikuan, so wala na siya gi-describe. So usually long bones gyud ang eye parts, no? Nga very prominent. Of course other irregular bones na sila yung mga waist, mga hips, na yung mga bayan na sila yung mga fossa, suture or whatever. So ana ra, pero general parts wala. So okay. So here the root root of diaphysis is your physis, which means growth. Dia and ep are this is your prefix, no? So dia means true and physis growth. So ano man siya, nasa sa end, no? So we have two diaphysis. Nasa dra sa shaft, no? Diaphysis. So pasabot mo na siya, no? Finish na siya tubo ang nas to nga kani. This is the diaphysis and this is the epiphysis. Okay, so above means na siya sa end, no? So it is where the growth, no, that happens in the epiphysis. Then you have your endo, which means within. Osteo means bone, so endosteum means within the bone. So endosteum is found here sa medullary cavity, covering na siya sa medullary cavity sa bone. Okay, ano siya ito? Endosteum. So bone marrow is known as myelo, no? So osteomyelitis means inflammation of the bone marrow, diba? Na term, no? Inana. So inana siya. So there are a lot of bone markings, no? So these are the bone markings. So ang bone markings, i-classify na siya into depression, protuberance. So when you say depression, medyo lalom. Protuberance means nagabulot, no? Naiburot. So ang protuberance, ang depression, daghang klase. Na siya fissure, na siya foramen, na siya fossa, fovea, sinus, and sulcus. So ang sulcus, na siyang description didri, no? So kani siya nga mga part makita na siya sa bukog. Okay, so but basically ang ato lang tigamnan permi ang foramen, that refers to opening. Fossa, hollow depression. When you say hollow depression is murag cup, no? Kanang pwede siya isandok ba. Ang fovea is a very small. When you say small lang pit murag lungag pero di gid siya lungag. O gamay ra gid kay siya, no? Murag cup, dili cup kana bitong panaksan sa mga mag teaspoon or kuan, no? Murag nana siya, so gagmay. Then your sinus is a cavity or a channel. When you say channel means na siya sa bukog, no? Na siya sa sulod. Na siya sa within, sa structure din naghalo siya dito. So So na siya hilab ni murag cavern ba. Nana siya. Then you have your sulcus, no? So kanal-kanal na siya, when you say called sulcus, no? Medyo gamay sa kanal, kaya ang kanal dako magina. No? So medyo gamay na siya sa kanal. So it's someone like a grove. Ana siya. Kanang itong murag nar siya trail no nga agyanan ana no sa bukod. So you have also your bony process or bone processes, no? So these are protuberance. When you say protuberance, naga-protrude, gaburot. So you have their condyle. So condyle dagko na siya, no? Mga bugdri creased, no? So mga sharp edges na, elongated elevation, so usually iliac crest, no? So medyo may pagka-sharp ang edges na. Then you have your facet. So facet is another process or a small projection nga ga-connect na siya sa flat articular surface niya, mahimo na siyang joint kung mag-connect, no? Then you have your epicondyle, gamay-gamay lang na siya sa condyle. So usually na siya makita sa mga long bone spot, no? Then you have your head and neck. When you say head, round yun na siya, no? Mostly round. Neck, liog. Man sa ulo, na gina siya dahil liog. So obvious na kayong let's say for example humerus and femur, they have the head, so therefore na gina siya. Agi siya neck. Trochanter, no? Tubercle and tuberosity. So these are protuberance or these are processes, nakausli na siya kung sa Tagalog pa, ito yung mga structure na nakausli sa buto. So you can easily palpate this. Okay, let's take for example tuberosity, tubercle. Okay, so you have here let's for example kani, this is a styloid process sa styloid process sa ulna kani, olecranon process. So these are bony prominences, no? Lateral epicondyle, medial epicondyle kani diri. So diri lateral di kay siya one, no? Pero prominent man siya, palpable na, si palpable ma-feel nimo, di ba? Okay, nana siya. Now, let's go to bone basics. So here, we can easily match this one. Kani given naman ang meaning na, no? So, ato na siyang maansiran, di ba? So, sayon naman na siya. Let's take for example, myelo. Isa man siya. Di ba bone marrow? So that's letter E, no? About feces, di ba, that is growth, no? Growth nature. Peri. Asa man ang peri? Di ba surrounding or around, no? Perichondrium, di ba? Ato man na mention na. So surrounding. F. Condyle o condylo. So these are sana siya dagko. Condyle means knob. So na siya. Spino. So so we can easily answer this one if we have studied this one, yung mga word. So that's why it's very important for you to study those terms, no? At the beginning. Okay. So let's take for example in the blank, osteoblast. Asa man na siya? Asa man na siya? That is formation of bone. Osteoclast, di ba? Breaking down or breaks bone, di ba? Ano siya? The shaft of the long bone is called the shaft, di ba to? Asto nga. Saan to? Diaphysis. Okay? Ang plural niya kay I man to, diaphysis. So you just change your to I into ES, di ba? So diaphysis. Okay? The outer covering of bone is the sa may outer covering sa bone, perosteum. Whereas the inner lining is endosteum. Ana, so sayo na, di ba? So let's go now. So this is now your skull. So ang another term sa skull nimo is cranium or cranium. Face or fascio. So inana. So the skull is made up of two parts, the cranium that encloses and protects the brain. So this is your cranium and your facial bone. So take note of this, class. So ang imuhang cranium kanira siya. You have your frontal, parietal, temporal, temporal, and your occipital. So these are your cranial bones or cranium, bones of the cranium. But when you say the facial bones, mo na ni siya imong facial bones diri. Excluding this one, mandible. It is a separate bone. So di siya included. Okay, so here we can find also here in the facial bone, we can find the sinuses now. So I have your frontal sinus, diri, frontal. You have your diri siya is maxillary. Then ang the rest ng sinuses is dito na sa sulod, no, sa sphenoid, ethmoid here in this portion, very bit. So going back na siya posteriorly, there are a lot of sinuses there, no? Ethmoid and sphenoid are found in that area. Sa may purpose sa sinuses, it contains air, no? Magsulod ang hangin dira. Para asa man ang hangin? It makes the head lighter. Para gaan siya, munang na siya hangin. Okay, kaya nga naman kaning atong ulo, approximately this is 5 kilograms ang average niya sa tanang tao. Madako man ka maniwang approximately 5 kilograms ang average weight sa imong head. Now, kung 5 kilograms na ano siya nakapatong sa gamay ra nga bukog sa cervical, imagine nimo ang liog nimo gamay ra man ang bukog, napadakuan ni kanirmang muscles nimo, no, muscles and other structures sa neck, mura man nagpadako. So now, kung wala na siya, yung mga muscles, gamay ra gyud, no? Bugat niya, 5 kilos niya, patong na himo siya dra, di ba ma-deteriorate na siya. So to make it more, a little bit lighter, so you have your sinuses. That's why you will feel your head is heavy if you have sinusitis. Why? Because the air cannot go in that sinus because it is already clogged up by fluids. Puno na siya sa fluids, so walay hangin. Munang bugat imong ulo. That's the reason. Okay, so kung ingnon ka nga hanginon ang grabe ka hangin niya, oy hambog giro. Tinuod na kay ano naman tayo sinuses which is filled with air. No, so prior na pagpalabig hinambog. Okay, so we have here the frontal bone, parietal. Ako na na-mention yun na. No? So these are the root word, no? Word root. Okay, so there is the temporal bones. Na siya dry mastoid process, no? And naka-attach po na the zygomatic process. Okay, so this one, no? Di ka dra siya. Now this one, this is your zygomatic process. Kapaingan na ni siya, this is your zygomatic bone. Dito sa likod, na siya mastoid process. So, kanang process, class, attachment, yun na siya sa muscle halos. Ang purpose ana niya. Attachment sa muscle or attachment sa tendon or ligaments. So kung muscle, di tendon. Kung ligaments, di joints na. Ano na siya dyan. Okay. So, ano siya? So these are the facial bones. So you have your zygoma, lacrimal, orbit. So zygoma sa facial na siya, diri na siya, zygomatic. No? Kani siya, zygomatic bone or cheekbone. No? So So ana kani prominent, no? So zygomatic. Lacrimal kaning diri dapit sa iliganan sa luha. Orbit is your eye, kaning sakit niya. Maxilla is kanang taas nga portion diri yang gina-attachan sa ngipon nimo, damo na siya maxilla, including diri nga area dapit. Okay, then your mandible, this one, that is a mandible. Then of course palatine kanang sa sulod aning proportion niya, that is your palate or palatine. Kani sa diri sa ilong nasal bone. So actually ang bones diri raman ang nasal bones. Kani sa tumoy is this is now midatob elastic cartilage. So gitawag kani sa tunga inatog na sig nasal septum. Okay? Nasok, ilong. Okay. Nose. So then let's go now to the rib cage. Okay, so ribs, we have 12 pairs of ribs. 7 of them is true. So standing sa C1, rib 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And nagitawag sila true ribs because they are directly connected to the vertebra and to the sternum. That's why they are called true ribs. Then you have your 8, 9, 10, which is your false ribs. False ribs kay wala sila direct connection sa sternum. Although they are connected dito sa vertebra, pero anteriorly they are not directly connected to the sternum, but rather they are connected to the costal cartilage, which is attached to the sternum. So nag-merge na sila, no, ang ilang costal cartilage paingon diri sa sternum. Then you have your floating ribs, no, duha ka floating ribs, the rib 10 and 11. Now if you notice, this number of ribs also correspond with the number of thoracic vertebra you have, no? Inana. So here sa sternum, on side parts sa sternum, you have your xiphoid process. This is the body, no, of the sternum, and this is the manubrium. So mano means hand, no? So pagpasabot mo to siyang gunitanan, no? Handle kay ang sternum, right? Ang isa ka term sa sternum is sterno. So actually it is a dagger bone. Kanang breastbone gitawag po na siya dagger bone. Di manubrium means handle of your dagger. Okay, ang tip niya is your xiphoid process, no? Kani siya diri. Okay, so tanaw na to. This is the ribs now. So mo ni siya akong giingin nga you have 7 true ribs because 1 2 3 4 5 2 3 4 5 6 7. So tanawon nimo kana siya diri iya na siya tanan sa 7th na. 8, 9, and 10, tanaw na to. See, the costal cartilage of this joined with the costal cartilage of the 7. Kasi wala sila direct connection dito sa sternum, but rather they are attached to the costal cartilage of the 7th rib. So that's why they are called false. And you're floating na dayon. So kani diri na kay suprasternal notch, kani diri. This is the suprasternal notch. And then kay ang sa kilid ana niya diri na diri imong jugular vein kasaka. Sometimes it's called jugular notch po. Okay. Then the spine. Okay, so spine sa vertebra, so these are the terms that we use in the spine of the vertebra. Vertebra or vertebro, spino, ano siya? Cervical or cervico, thoracic or thoraco, lumbar or lumbo, sacral, sacro, coccygeal or coxo. So ina na siya. So mo ni siyang region. Cervical or cervico refers to neck. Thoraco refers to the thorax or chest, the back diri niya, no? Lumbar, lower back diri. So there are 5 lumbar vertebra, 12 thoracic, 7 cervical, then your sacral, which is 5 also that fuse into 1, and your coccyx or your tailbone. So inana. So all in all, we have 31 vertebral column. Okay. So sa may kalainan, no, sa atong cervical. Na isa ka kalainan lang sa cervical vertebra. Ana isa. Daghan siya pero ako lang i-mention ang ang name, no, sa vertebra sa cervical. Lain name ang cervical vertebra 1 and 2, no. Ang 1 ginatawag siya atlas because it carries the head. Ang 2 ginatawag siya axis because it is where the atlas rotate, no. So basically ang movement nimo inana sa atlantoaxial sa atlanto-occipital means between the atlas and the occiput or occipital bone sa imuhang cranium, no, joint na siya. Ang movement dira is more on flexing ana ra. Na. So we call that as yes joint ang atlanto-occipital. Atlanto-occipital na siya ang movement, no. Then you have your axis and the atlas. We call that atlantoaxial joint. So gikan siya sa atlas and axis. So kay naman siya axis, but pasabot ang iyang movement dira is rotation halos, no. So ana nga movement. So when you do that, the movement happens in the atlantoaxial, or we call the atlantoaxial as no joint, no. Kay may yung kag nakayuyab, no, di makapwede nga no. Oh, yes man na, di ba? So ina na siya. Okay, so here we can now from gikan diri sa taas, we can now answer this one, di ba? Example ani, back of the skull, usiput, chest, ano man yung chest? Another term, basta na another term, that's thoraco. Tailbone, coccyx, di ba? Cheekbone, 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 zygomatic. Low back, lumbo. Roof of the mouth, palate. So inana, skull, so may skull. Kita natin dito, skull. Crânio. Ako lang tanaw na, i-check lang na ako kung ano ba other answer. Wala. So, cranium na siya. Okay. Back of the skull, or back of the head, occiput, no? Breastbone, sterno. Diba? Nalade. Nakita na ko to. Nanera, sterno. Cartilage, chondro. So, there. So, inana siya. So, inana ra siya pag one. So, then you have your appendicular skeleton. So, appendicular skeleton, kabalo naman taanay na, we have discussed this already sa ato ang anatomy. Diba? Sa anatomy nato, upper limb is made up of the dito sa imong scapula. No. Upper limb, shoulder girdle ladder, scapula and the clavicle. So, ini clavicle, scapula, that is your shoulder girdle. Together they form acromioclavicular joint here. Then ang imong kuano pod ang humerus dayon nimo. Then your ulna, then radius, then your carpals, then phalanges, metacarpals, then phalanges. So ana siya. So here muna ni siya ang imong carpal bones. You have your scaphoid, lunate, then your trapezium, then your pisiform, P, then your greater mortangular, lesser mortangular, then your capitate and your hamate. Anong lahi ang giterm na ko, greater and lesser mortangular? Kay tungod ni G and M. Okay, so kung imong tanaw na siya kaning G, this is also your na to. M, that is your trapezoid, then your trachitrum, capitate and hamate, no? So this is your trapezoid, trachitrum, capitate and hamate. So inana siya. So that's how you name it. This is the first metacarpal, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So this is the little finger, this is the thumb, this is the index, middle, and ring. So inana. So this is the radius and the ulna. So if you notice, this is the distal end of the radius, which is big, and this distal end of the ulna, which is a little bit smaller. So opposite sila, di ba? Nag 69. Kaya nga naman, this is the head of the ulna, and this is the unsa pa lobot na sa radius, no? Ang head niya to dito speakas po. Okay, now here gi-connect na siya ang upper limb nimo sa shoulder girdle through what we call joint. So ang joint diri ginatawag ni siya nga glenohumeral joint. So that is the joint between the glenoid fossa and your humeral head. So, glenohumeral joint. Okay, so it is a ball and socket. So we have discussed also that in anatomy, there are different types of joint depending on its structure, ang classification, and depending on its function. Tapos siya structure and functional classification. Napag-struct na paisa na niya ka classification, limot ko no. According to movement pod kang i-allow niya. So inana. So let's start with diri sa structure. So na siya structure nga immovable type of joint sa mga siya nga klase sa joint. That is your fibrocartilaginous, then your cartilaginous, and your synovial. So bali di ay una ang cartilaginous type of joint, which is immovable, then fibrocartilaginous type of joint, which is unang kita yung fibrocartilage. Okay, sorry class, I'm just a little bit confused. Fibrocartilaginous type, then cartilage, then synovial. So cartilage, example na niya katong BD, no, that is slightly movable. Fibrocartilaginous is your kanidri suture type of joints. Of course. So sorry class, and just to make sure, I don't want you to get confused. Mas may pa ako ma-confuse. No? This is a type of joints. Let me see sa class. I don't want to get confused. That's why I'm looking at the joints. Okay. Sakto. Okay, so I'm just making it short, class. So your so inato na siya class, no? Fibrocartilaginous is the immovable, the cartilaginous is the slightly movable, and your synovial. So I try to make it sure nga para di mo ma-confuse. So ang fibrocartilaginous, ang example ana suture joint. So kanindri na suture diri sa ulo, di ba? Pag panganak nimo kani siya nga mga bones, di ba? You have your frontal, parietal, temporal, sipot. Wala man na sila naka-unite, no? But as you grow old, these joints fuse together, form a suture joint, which is very tight, no? Murag 90 nahian nadra siya, zigzag. Yan na pud na siya coronal suture, sagittal, then lumboid, adre lumboid. Nako na siya diri sa pika sigmoid. No? So inhana. No. So dili immobile na siya karon, no? Bisan sa mo na maglisod ka gani kan. So that is mobile type joint. Then you have your cartilaginous. United with the cartilage, so one tong intervertebral disc. So these are cartilaginous type of joint. No, slightly movable na siya, mga liwag pero bigid kaayo. Pubis symphysis. No, slightly movable na o dili pud kaayo. Napay daghang immovable type kani sa tit nato. Gomphosis this joint. No, immovable man na. Kaya kung movable po na itong ngipon nala, naunsa na lang. Okay, so those are immovable. Then you have your synovial, which is freely movable type of joint. Okay, which is may mga 3 degrees of freedom, no? May 1 degree, so they can flexion, extension, ano. Anyway, we will be reach up to that. So these are now your appendicular skeleton. So I have your pelvis, which is made up of the ilium, the pubis, and the ischium. Then you have here the femur, the patella, tibia, fibula, and you have your tarsal, no? Then metatarsals and the phalanges. So coxa means hip, coxo. Then acetabulum, acetabulo. Then ilium, ilio. Okay. Then ischium, ischium. Pubis, pubu. Okay. Then you have your femur. Okay. Then you have your patella, so na siya patello, tibia, fibula. The malleolus, you have 2 malleolus, lateral and medial. So kani diri lateral malleolus, medial malleolus, dira siya kita still. Okay, so inadi na siya dira. You can easily match this one. Claviculo or Clydo, that is collarbone, clavicle, metacarpo, that is your wrist bone. Yeah, that is wrist bone, metacarpo. Ano carpo, that is wrist bone. Digit, that is your phalanges. Okay, so na siya de. Metacarpo, hand bone. Digit is your finger or toe. So kani siya digit to, din siya finger or toe bones. Kani siya phalango, mo siya finger or toe, isa ra ka buok. Then radio, radius, scapulus, scapular. So sayon rin siya class, no? Once you know the name, no? Sayon rin siya. So here na margyapon na. So I leave it to you to study with regards to this one. So joint mo na ito sige na. So we have here so joints and arthrosis, ampiarthrosis. Now these are a classification of the joints. Ampiar means both. Arthro joint, then CCA's condition. So this is a slightly movable type of joint. Sinar means immovable. Manatagin na suture sa scalon. That's an example. Suture lines, vertebrae, spine, pubic bones. That is for ampiarthrosis. The arthrosis, you have your synovial joints. Okay, so bursa. So there are a lot of synovial joints. So you have your temporomandibular kanidri, na occipito-cervical joint. That is atlanto-occipital. Then cervicovertebral joint. So that is the joint between C1 C2. Cervicothoracic, that is between C7 and T1 in joint. Costotransverse joint, costal transverse joint. So this is the joint between the ribs and the transverse process of the vertebra. Costovertebral joint between the ribs and the vertebral body. Thoracic facet, so that is the joint between two vertebra through the facet joint, no? Thoracolumbar, sternoclavicular. So it's very easy to know where is that joint located as long as you know the bones, the name of the bones. Let's take for example sternoclavicular. So it's a joint between the sternum and clavicle. So where we can find the sternum? Here, breastbone, clavicle here. So diri nga joint, sternoclavicular. Humero-ulnar, humerus and ulna. Asa man ang humerus kani? Ang ulna kani. So dahil siya joint dra. So inana siya, no? So once you know the joint, the bones, the name of the bones, so it's really very easy for you to identify which or where is the joint located. Diba? Mag-iim kag tibiofemoral, tibia and femur. See? So inana tuhod, wala siya, knee joint, tibiofemoral. So proximal radioulnar. Proximal means asa man ang radius? Dire. Ang ulna niya. Joint nilang duha, proximal. Asa man day ang proximal? So dire. Diba? Dire distal. So proximal na dire depend, diba? So inana proximo radioulnar joint. So inana lang. Okay, so inana. So we have here carpal sa wrist, between the carpal bones, wrist joint. So between the radius and ulna and the proximal row of the carpal bones, manang tawag na wrist joints. Okay, so ana diri. So mailan na nimo siya dayon kung makatuod ka sa bukog, you can easily identify this one. Kung nasa na siya dira, no? Hip joint, no? Balok ka kung nasa na, unsa man ang ga-compose sa hip joint. So it's the pelvis and the head of the femur. So asa man na siya between pelvis and head of the femur. Pangita na ito. Na pelvis diri or hip. Kani. Meron. Thigh bone and hip bone. Diba thigh femur, hip pelvis. Ano siya? So ina, sacrococcygeal, sacrum and coccyx. Pangita na ito dira ang sacrum and coccyx. Tailbone, na tailbone. So nira. Okay, so inana lumbar joint. Inana itong na-word nga lumbar or low back. Between lower backbones. So na siya. Medial meniscus. Okay, now asa man makita ng medial meniscus? Sa knee. So let's look for knee. So cartilage in the inner edges of the knee joint. So na. Femoropatellar joint. So femur and patella. So let's look for the femur and patella. Femur and patella. Kita na to siya. Thigh bone and shin man na, tibia na siya. Ano yan? Thigh bone and kneecap kay patella man. See? So inana lang siya, class. So let's talk about ligament and bursae. So ligamento or syndesmo, bursa, burso, synovial. So bursa are sacs that appear in the synovial joints with the function of providing additional cushioning. So cushion ang function niya na. Then synovial membrane is filled with synovial fluid. Now this A fluid serves as lubricating. The lubricating fluid, usually it is found in the joint, specifically synovial, no, mamito na. So na siya dito ang synovial membrane, in sa sulod sa membrane ay fluid para malubricate ang imong joint para mag-move, no. Okay, na siya. So kani siya mga ligaments sa body. So usually ang ligaments are named after their locations. So kung asa na dapit, so let's take for example cervical interspinous. So this is neck. Interspinous mean between the spine of the cervical vertebra. So inana ra siya pag understood ana niya. Cervical intertransverse. So kani cervical intertransverse. So this is a ligament that connects between the transverse process of the two cervical vertebra. So sa kilid. So inana lang siya. So if you know now the name of the bone, you can easily identify also where is the location of that ligament, because the ligament is usually named after the bone that it connects, bones that it connects. So sa'yo na siya ma-identify, no? Well, let's take for example glenohumeral. So glenoid and humerus ayang gi-connect. So asa sa diri sa shoulder, di ba? So inana siya. Okay? So sayo na gyud siya, class. So there's no need for you to panic. Kadaghan sa mga ligaments. No need for you to panic. All you have to do is to understand and know the name of the bone. Once you know the name of the bone, you could easily locate that ligaments. Okay? And also the parts of the bone, huh? So you have here sa knee. I have discussed this also dito sa anatomy sa knee. No? So this is the patella. Now this is now your articular cartilage, or yes, this is the femur. Kani siya tendon sa quadriceps. Kani siya patellar tendon, tibial tuberosity. Then you have your tibia. This is the medial meniscus. This is the lateral meniscus, no? Then you have your lateral collateral ligament. Then there is ito nga naandira ang ACL na to o PCL, diba? Ito na discuss, no? Mula ni siya ang kalahian lang ani sa mga dagko nga joint kay wala siya ang mga ligaments nga naadira, no? Especially sa elbow and knees. Dili sila named after the bone, but they are named after the locations. If they're located medially, anteriorly, or posteriorly. Okay? So inana. So sa tuhod, mo ni ang kalahian. Anterior cruciate, lateral collateral ligament, nasa posterior cruciate, patellar ligament, popliteal, posterior cruciate. So inana siya. That is also true sa elbow. Okay? So kani, so since na-understand na nimo ni kani kung unsay pag-name ana, so it is very easy for you to match this one to this area also. Okay? So sayo ra gyud siya pag-match mo. Then we have now the muscles. So ako, okay, na-discuss naman natin ng muscles, di ba? Skeletal and smooth and heart muscles. So these are the basic, no, nga mga muscles sa body. Okay? So mo na siya ng mga skeletal kani skeletal muscles man. So kung may cardiac heart ra gyud na smooth dito sa internal organs. So tomorrow, next meeting rather, which will be Monday, I'm going to upload this one. I will make a discussion with this one regards to the muscles, and After that, mo ang sunod natin i-discuss after sa muscles is we will discuss the skin, no? Skin, okay? So, nana. So, good evening and thank you for watching and listening this discussion this evening.